So my next guest, I did him a nice favor. I played some Rusted Root. They are a Pittsburgh-based band, but that's about all the love I'm giving you, Keith Pompey.
Go home, Mountaineer.
That's what you get. Sorry about that. I'm just letting it run out a little bit there so that you could just take it all in. Rusted Root, based out of Pittsburgh. Keith Pompey, Philly.com, The Inquirer. He is a Pitt guy. I'm a WVU guy, but we still get along. How are you, my man?
I'm all right. A whole lot better than your university, but I'll be all right.
All right, man. We got a lot to dive into here, even though the Sixers are done playing. They got a pretty big offseason ahead. I saw that you were reporting the other day that there could be some suitors for Tobias Harris, and it's seemingly a lot of suitors. And I'm interested to see how high up on the priority list you think he is to Elton Brand when he's got all these teams knocking on his door.
I think he's very high. I mean, the Sixers just have to decide. I mean, I believe that they're going to bring him back. I believe that they're going to offer him the max because of, when you look at it, they gave up 2 first-round picks for him. They also gave up Landry Shamet. Now, I know there were other players involved in this trade, but all of them had expiring contracts, and we all know that, Tobias was the prize of this trade. So it's one of those things where signing him has to be huge for the Sixers, and especially since they can give him something that no other team can. But, I was in Chicago, and his name kept coming up quite a bit, at the Combine. A lot of executives talking about Tobias Harris.
Yeah, he's a guy, 26 years old. I think we forget that he's only been in the playoffs one time. He's rather young, and that he's got a lot of growing left to do. I mean, he shot much better in L.A., Keith, than he did in Philly. He was like 43% from 3 in L.A. He was only like 32% in Philly. So I would have to imagine the Sixers are aware of that and saw that and say, hey, maybe if we get this guy for a full year and in our system, that number can get closer to the L.A. version.
Yeah, I do. And then I also think that if you look at it, when he was in L.A., he was more of a vocal point, of what they were trying to do. He comes here and the best case scenario, he's the third option, like when the whole team was together. Other than that, he was the fourth option. And typically when in those scenarios, guys are rushing their shots and not really getting their rhythm because they don't know the next time they're going to get the ball. And I think that if he comes back, they're going to have to try to make him more of a priority, in the flow of the game.
Yeah, Keith, and I was listening to one of your Locked On podcasts about a week or so ago, and you guys were pontificating about the point of, does he want to be the man somewhere, or is he happy being maybe the fourth option? In Game 7, he had a really good start to that game, and in the second half, he only gets 4 shots, and I guess that's something. Does he want the money and a chance to win, or does he want to be the man somewhere and get paid really good money, not the best money, but what and he's a pretty interesting guy, very good character guy. So I find him to be an interesting case study of money versus role on a team.
Yeah, I think, the thing with him with the money, the fact that he's 26 years old, this isn't going to be his last contract. It's not. Based off of talking to him, during his exit interviews, the thing that's really important, he wants to play for a contender. Of course, he wants to get a max contract, but years if he doesn't take the Sixers deal, I believe that he feels as if that he's going to be able to make that up with somewhere else, get it with his next deal. But to him, he wants to be in a great culture. I mean, he wants to be on a team where all the guys get along. There's going to be not a lot of drama. I mean, let's face it, there's going to be some drama on any roster you go to, but he wants more like a family-type atmosphere. He wants the guys to get along. He wants them all to be like, so to speak, a brotherhood. And that says a lot about his personality because, like you said, he's a high-character guy. He just doesn't want a lot of drama, and, he wants to be on a team that's, going to be a contender as well. And, he's made a lot of money. He's going to make money. But, I think when you factor all three of those things in, they're all equal. You know, he's not the type of guy that's just going to go to a team just because he can make, you know, he can break the bank, so to speak. He has to live, and he wants to be happy.
Keith Pompey, at Pompey on Sixers, Inquire, Philly.com. Follows the Sixers, of course, this draft June the 20th. We'll dive into a couple of draft things. Tobias Harris, Suitors, including the Kings, Mavericks, Jazz, Nets, Pacers, according to league sources. That's from Keith Pompey. Do the Sixers prioritize one or the other, or are they both a package deal? Like, it's either going to be both, none, or what? I mean, do they have some sort of pecking order in your mind?
I'm not too sure about that one in regards to, like, pecking order. But I do know that, you know, when you talk to the Sixers, you know, they're not really going into a lot of detail, or other than saying that, you know, we always said we want to bring the core back. So I think that's their focus, of bringing the core back. Now, in regards to a pecking order, you know, everything kind of changes, and I'm saying from the outside looking in. Like, you look at it and you'll say, okay, Jimmy Butler, at one point he was the guy. Then Tobias comes, and then Tobias is the guy. And then in the playoffs, who was the second leading scorer, or who was the leading scorer? It was Jimmy. So you would think that, okay, well, you have to go out and get Jimmy. And then you talk about Tobias, and it's one of those things where, okay, Tobias is 29. There's a lot of different teams out here who express their interest in him, and we know that they're going to give him a max. So it's one of those things where, well, man, we can't let him go either. You know what I mean? Maybe we may have to talk to him first. But I honestly believe that, you know, both of these guys, it will probably take for them to get a max, you know, for the Sixers to give them a max to stay. Because other than that, I mean, it's going to – Jimmy, I know Jimmy will probably look at it like it's an insult. Like, what you mean you're not going to give me one? And the thing with Tobias is they gave up so much. So, I mean, I know that's not really giving you your answer, but I think that both of them and JJ, I mean, I think both of these guys are A, and JJ, bringing JJ back is B. But, you know, I think the way that they gave up so much to get these three, or these two, you can't let one of them walk out of the door.
Right. So, like, their priority number one is to run it back with this group of guys would be their top priority. Let me follow up with this then. Last year when we would have this conversation, it was, are they in play for LeBron? Are they going to talk to Paul George? Could they make a trade for Kawhi? Is that even a secondary option for them this year? Like, do they get involved with any of the high-profile guys, or is that not even, like, on the priority list for them?
I mean, I think we would be foolish to think that is not. You know what I mean? I think, like you said, they are going to put a lot into bringing this whole group back, but at the same time, they do have to have a plan B. Now, the only problem with this year in the free agency class is, you know, like, if you think about it, you know, there's 10 guys out there that a lot of people are talking about. You know, at least 5 or 6 of those guys are going to stay with their teams. You know, and then you look at Kawhi, you know, you look at Kevin Durant, they'll leave. But it's one of those things where, you know, Kevin Durant is linked to the Knicks or going to L.A. or staying. You know, Kawhi is linked to Toronto or going to L.A. So the Sixers aren't they're not in play for those guys. And secondly, I don't know if they go out and they give, like, one of the two, Jimmy or Tobias, max money, that they can afford to go out and bring in someone else on a max scale. So, you know, that's the problem. And then the reason why they could give it to both of them, you know, to Jimmy and Tobias, is because they own their bird rights, and then they just have to pay the luxury tax.
Right.
But they don't have enough space to go out there and possibly be able to bring in someone else, you know, like a Kevin Durant. I mean, he just makes too much money for him. So, you know, that's the problem. But, yeah, I mean, they have to go out there and have a plan B. Again, if you can't get one of these marquee guys, are you going to overpay for a role player? That's the question they have to ask themselves.
Now, I don't know how much of the free agent list, you know, beyond the top guys you've kind of dug into yet, but is there a secondary player that interests you, that raises your eyebrows and says, he would be interesting if they can get into the market for that guy.
It's weird. It's funny. The one guy who I thought that they should go after, at least for coming off the bench, was Tyreek Evans, but he got popped and he won't be around for 2 years for substance abuse. So I guess you can't have that. You can't have him.
Right.
But as far as if they can't get, if Jimmy or Tobias walks, one of them walk, I'm interested in Marcus Morris. He's not a max player, but he's a guy that you can get in there and you can plug in and be a gritty power forward. He can do that for you. I still think that it's good to bring Mike Scott back, but I don't know if Mike Scott is like a starter on this team. But I think like a Marcus Morris is a guy that you can go after, now, and then you have like Malcolm Brogdon. The Sixers need a backup point guard. He could be someone, that the Sixers may be in the market for just because of, Milwaukee has to sign so many players, and I don't know if they could bring all of them back.
Yeah. So
I would try to go after Malcolm Brogdon as well.
Some interesting free agents this year. It'll be an interesting time. 24 is the pick. Cam Johnson, North Carolina. I saw you write about him. Lewis King is a guy that I was interested in. I think you said that they had a workout scheduled with the Sixers. Elton mentioned they want a veteran player who's seemingly ready to play and defensive-minded. So he gave us some clues. That Cam Johnson seems like he checks all of those boxes off.
Yeah, he's someone, he's someone that, they're going to have to, hope and pray that he's available.
Right.
Because I'm hearing that he could leave early. And, that's someone that, the Sixers have the first-round pick. They also have 4 second-rounders. I wouldn't be surprised if the Sixers really wanted them, that they would move up to a spot where they would be insured of having them and getting rid of some of those second-round picks, to do that. But yeah, he's a guy, and he wants to play for the Sixers. A lot of times guys say that, they talk about teams, but, he has family in Philly. He has family in Blackwood, New Jersey, and he's a Sixers fan. I mean, he grew up in Western PA. T.J. McConnell's from Western PA. They're from neighboring towns. So once T.J. became a Sixer, he kind of followed him closely, in addition to having, the family members here. So, he thinks that it will be a great fit for him. He fits in well what they want. Like the Sixers are built to win now if they bring everyone back. So they don't really have time to develop a young guy. They need a guy they can just throw in there, coming in off the bench. And that's a great role for him. He can stick threes. He's older, and he can play defense.
Yeah, I like that. When I saw that they were working him out, I'm like, all right, I like that. I like the fact that we're all thinking on the same wavelength. I know somebody to back up Joel is probably going to be a priority as well, you would think?
Yeah, that's a huge priority. The thing is, you look at Jonah Bolden, we all know that he's coming back. You would think that, before the playoffs started, that Boban would be a definite, but right now you really don't know. I mean, you really don't know. And there are some guys out there, but, are you able to afford them? But, it could be one of those things where if the Sixers, we all know the relationship that Boban has with Tobias Harris, it could be one of those things where they feel a need that, hey, we want to keep this thing together. Tobias is all about loyalty. How else are we going to show loyalty if we don't, bring back his best friend? So, I mean, that could always be an option. It's just that, the problem is the Sixers we know what they did in the regular season, but they want to get out of the second round. So do they have enough faith and confidence in Boban to be able to utilize him in the playoffs, especially someone who can help him get to an NBA Finals?
2-2, Raptors-Bucks. Who wins that series?
Man, I still think it's going to come down. I still think it's going to come down to 7 games, and I think because of that, it's going to be the Bucks. I mean, they're going to win at home, especially in the Game 7. Giannis has played horrible, in the way the last couple games. he was out of character. I think he's going to bounce back. Another thing is Kawhi hasn't really been himself. I know that the bench guys played their best game, but that's different. Like, role players typically play well at home. Well, they got one game left at home if they go 7, and they have 2 on the road, and I don't think that the role players can match that intensity, in a game 7.
What could have been? He's Keith Pompey, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. See, I came in with some Pittsburgh-based music. I'm going to leave with some West Virginia.
Hell to Pitt, brother. You can play whatever you want. Hell to Pitt.
Keith Pompey, take care, pal.
All right, peace.